You paid to build a road to stand.
It's like being
Now
a
you can't be taken.
town.
How's 11 weeks ago? Yeah.
They just keep cutting it, you keep cutting
But
it
if,
till it dies.
but if you cut it square, it won't go as fast. Right.
Yes, you gotta cut it, you gotta cut it.
It's right there, right?
It's. You do it every 3 years. Yeah. Don't. I totally agree.
Right.
I know none of ours are present pay in. Well, that's why I found them, I couldn't open this letter.
Like yours, microphone on, see? No, mine does not.
Nobody home.
Nobody home there.
Well, that's good.
Then they just wait a minute, see if we can get the hours.
We had worried anytime we had a bad season, they'll laugh. Because.
Well,
I might.
I called the.
I gotta get into something. That's not.
No, but we'll get to that in a minute. I can't remember what the other issue was.
It's having a little trouble. Hi, we can't get our.
Yeah.
Dave's good, like, it's already, so I'll be able to split one, and
Yeah.
then I'm buying more.
The last.
So-
IT's on it.
I don't think
I
so.
got, I got one.
It's
Like, I got.
I used to work with any issues. Only
There are a couple
probably still running.
Yep.
To bark in your authoritative voice.
Like a hobby first, and then it became a job, and then it became. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
Yes.
Welcome, everybody, to our maintenance budget meeting of April 13th. I'll ask our CEO for the roll call, please.
Very much. So we start with the chair and Deputy Mayor Singh. Mayor Blair,
Present.
Councillor Weatherby,
Present.
Councillor Richardson,
Present.
Councillor Cooper. Present. Councillor Johnson is on virtual. Yeah, boy, okay. Councillor Leggett.
Present.
Councillor Martell,
Present.
Councillor Patton,
Present.
Councillor Benoit has communicated she's going to be running late. Councillor Fletcher,
Present.
Councillor Kennedy. Present. You have quorum.
Thank you, Dan. In peace and in friendship and in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I acknowledge that the municipality of Colchester is in Mi'kma'ki, the unceded and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq. And as this is our maintenance budget meeting, I will turn it over to Scott, please. You're going to walk us through this.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor, and good evening, Council. I have a slideshow here that I'll put up on the screen. First. We want to see it. Before I start, I'll just check and make sure everyone can see it virtually and as well as in the room. I guess Councillor Johnson is the only virtual member. Just wanted to check before I start and see that you can see the presentation okay?
I think he heard you.
Maybe not.
Councillor Johnson, can you see the slideshow? You're muted.
I can, yes.
Oh, great,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. And my microphone's on too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we'll get started. This is the Colchester operating budget maintenance presentation for fiscal year 2026, 2027. So basically, before we get into all the details, a bit of an overview. What we're covering tonight is the operating budget for the fiscal year, as opposed to a capital budget. So with the operating budget, it's more of an income statement as opposed to a balance sheet. So we're looking at revenues and expenditures both maintain and operate our municipal services. So things like road service, solid waste, protective services, administration. That's all part of this budget. Later on in the year, we'll look at the capital budget, which is more of a balance sheet exercise where we're looking at actual assets and how we pay for them. And that would be more like the buildings, road construction, equipment, things like that. So I always try to preface this with that explanation to kind of frame things. Maintenance budget, we provide resource allocation for different services. And then once we do that, and once we make those decisions, it comes down to what we want to levy for a tax rate to provide those services. So just a little bit of an explanation on what a budget is. It's a financial plan. It sets out the planned expenditures and the means for financing those expenditures over the next fiscal year. That's an April to March fiscal year for municipalities. It's a statement on our priorities, establishing spending limits for programs and services. It reflects on the funding priorities of council. And also sort of links to our strategic priorities and how we accomplish those. The reason we create a budget, first and foremost, I guess I would say it's a planning document. So it's setting out a plan for the next 12 months. It is a legislative requirement. So under the Municipal Government Act, we have to set a budget. And it also provides accountability. So residents would be our primary stakeholders, but also creditors such as banks, the business community, and then our other partners. How do we create a budget? A little bit of background on how we get to where we're at tonight. Several months ago, late fall, early winter, the process starts, and department managers are provided with a template and data from finance, and then they provide their draft budgets to us for review. We go through a process which we call zero-based budgeting. So when I say that, I'm essentially saying we're starting from scratch each year, as opposed to other techniques in budgeting where people sometimes will take the prior year and they'll add 3% to everything. The benefit by going through a zero-based is we're basing the budget and costing it based on the priorities for the year. So it provides a more accurate, in my mind, it provides a more accurate budget. The documents that are received, we review them through finance. We incorporate strategic priorities into the document. And then we sit down with council and review and get input as needed on the document. Municipalities are required to do a balanced budget. That's part of the legislative requirement. So unlike other levels of government that can have a surplus or deficit, municipalities have to have a balanced budget. A couple of things that I just point out with respect to the operating budget, things that we look at, have to consider, the inflation or the cost of goods and services that are increasing year over year. Growth, particularly around new development on the revenue side. So, new property development is reflected in that. Legislative requirements. So we'll talk about that tonight with respect to what the municipality is required to fund. Risk management. User fees. So, primarily we'll see in our revenues, tax levy is the primary user fee, but there are other fees as well. such as the deed transfer tax and things like tipping fees for solid waste. They're all reflected in this budget. Process improvements, so looking for ways to build capacity within the budget for the next 12 months. I mentioned here as well policing. We had a conversation last year at this time about council's strategic priorities, and policing was one of those. And improved policing services, and you may recall we funded 3 extra positions at that point, and that was part of a phased-in approach. So we will touch on that tonight as well. Salaries and benefits, which I always point out is one of our largest cost drivers. And that's both union and non-union. Union being governed by the collective agreement, and non-union by our personnel policies. And last but not least, contributions to our reserves and our debt financing. So when I talked earlier about the capital budget and how it's a different budget from our operating budget, there are some links between the two, and the two do work together. And in terms of reserves, we put money aside in our reserves to help pay for the capital assets, as well as some operating costs as well, but primarily for capital and debt financing. So again, primarily capital based, but the municipality periodically goes out and borrows, and then the principal and interest costs are part of our operating budget, but it's typically for capital assets that would be secured through the capital budget. So the first page here, what I brought up, just to kind of walk through the first page of the budget. That's essentially the summary page or the income statement of the budget. So you'll see the first column basically highlights what revenues and expenses are in the large broad categories. And then as you go through the columns, each column is explained at the top. So the second column is our budget from the prior year. Third column is our year to date, which would have been back in November, and we use that to project where we're going to be for March 31st. Then the fifth column over, that's our maintenance budget. So that's base service, base level of service. And then the additions deletions column follows it. And those are some highlighted strategic initiatives that council will make decisions on through this process. And then last but not least is the maintenance budget with the additions and deletions incorporated. So you'll see right now with everything in incorporating all the additions and deletions, we have total revenue of 47.1 million, and our expenses are very close to that. We just have a slight surplus of 34,000. It's a little bit confusing when you look at, you'll see total expenses of 53.3 million, but we do back out depreciation, and that's 6.2 million. So that leaves you with the number in the very bottom right corner, which is this 34,000. So essentially, if we were to do everything in our maintenance budget, including the additions and deletions, we'd have, for all intents and purposes, a balanced budget. Now that doesn't mean that all of those things will get approved, or maybe there'll be some things that you may wish to add as we go through. But it's a good spot to be in, I guess, is what I'll say. In some situations in other municipalities, they may be looking at a deficit and how to cut back in services or make changes like raising taxes. So right off the bat, we're in a pretty good position, I think, with this budget. In terms of the revenues that are in the document, by and large, most of our revenue is through taxation. So you'll see, 29.6 million, is coming from residential taxation. Just shy of 8.7 million is coming from commercial. And then, after that, the third largest is the transfer tax, which is budgeted at 4 million. After that, all the other sources of revenue that we have in the budget are, by comparison, quite a bit smaller. You've got 1.3 million for government transfers. And we've got grants in lieu of just shy of 1.4 million. And that's primarily provincial and federal property that they don't have to pay tax under our taxation process, but they do have to pay a grant in lieu of tax. So that's 1.3 million. And our own sources equate to just shy of 1.5 million. So that brings us to the total that I had mentioned in the previous slide of 47.1 million. So I'll focus a little bit on, I'll talk a little bit about taxation and tax revenues, because primarily that's our largest source of revenue. As most people are aware, PVSC do the assessment role for the municipalities, and each year they factor in a capped assessment value. So for 2026, capped assessment came in at 2.6. That's compared to the prior year, which was 1.5. And you'll see when you look at the historical values, those numbers have been higher in recent years. By comparison, in the past, PVSC's values were quite a bit lower. So prior to, I'm going to say 2022, a lot of times you can see a very flat number, so 1% or less. But in recent years, it's been higher, starting with 2022 when it went up to 5.4, and then 2023 when it went up to 7.7. So it has come down a little bit, but still seeing growth in the assessment cap. And that doesn't include, I will say, that doesn't include new development. That's just cap on assessments that are pre-existing. On top of that, you also have new development, so new growth. There are two different numbers that PVSC provides. They do a market value and a cap value. So they do go out and assess property, and they do it in a variety of ways, primarily based on things like location, land features, the size of the property, the construction quality, age and condition. All those things factor in and determine what a market value will be. And then from there, until the property sells, it goes based on a cap. So essentially your property, once it's built, developed, until it sells, they apply a cap factor, which is essentially a CPI that they use every year. Now, as I said earlier, there is the cap value on assessments, but there's also things like market value, market cap exchanges. When you sell the property, the cap comes off and the market value is applied in that year. New development that's occurring within the county. All those things play into what we see for our total growth. So total growth for the year for 2026 on residential is 8.44%. And that's tracking along fairly consistently the last 5 years. You'll see that 2025 was just under 8% at 7.63. 2024 was 8.12. 2023, which was the largest spike we had, was 11.59%. Then on the commercial side, those numbers are a bit normally a bit lower, and that has to do with the way commercial properties assessed, and it's assessed a bit different than residential property, so there is a depreciation factor that they apply when they assess property. So still, these numbers are quite a bit higher than we've seen in the past. 2026, we had a 2.96% increase, and that's up from the prior year, which was 2.27%. So all that to say that we've seen fairly consistent growth in our assessment role over the last 5 years, I would say. And prior to that, it was quite flat. So that's one of the main reasons I think that when we get to the budget and we talk about it being balanced, it's been a bit easier the last couple of years to balance the budget because of the growth we've seen in assessment. The next slide is on tax rate comparisons. So I did include some of our neighbors to compare. Focus primarily on the county comparators because it's kind of difficult to compare a town or a village to a rural municipality. Just there's different services, different population density, so it doesn't equate to a good comparison. But you'll see that our rates residential is currently 88.5 per 100 of assessment, and commercial is $2.28. And how that compares, Cumberland is residential 1.17, commercial $2.74. East Hants is at 80 cents residential and $2.57 on commercial. Kings is 85 cents, $2.29 on commercial. Pictou County is 81.5 cents residential. Commercial is $1.82.5. So it kind of gives you a sense of where we fall within our area. Next slide is just a little bit of information on our third largest revenue source, the deed transfer tax. Currently, we have a budget in this document at $4 million. We're projecting $4.3 million in actual revenue for the year we're finishing. Nova Scotia has seen a fairly strong seller's market the last number of years, as well as higher interest rates. So I think right now, the market is still strong, but it has cooled off a little bit. Interest rates are coming down, so we have gone with a $4 million revenue for the upcoming year, and that's based on that, and also just being conservative with the number. I think by doing that, we put ourselves in a good position. We currently charge a deed transfer tax of 1.5%, and the MGA allows us to go up to 1.5. So there's no room to increase that rate. We're at the max that we can charge on it. In terms of our expenditures, you'll see on this pie chart. No surprise compared to what we've talked about in the past. Our largest expenditure is provincial transfers at 45% of our budget, or just over 21 million. And we'll go into detail on what those are, but that's fairly consistent with what we've seen in the past. It's always around 45%. After that, we have our reserves. So the budget includes just shy of 4 million, or 8% of our budget expenses will be for our reserves. Debt principal payments are down to 1.2 or 3% of our budget. Legislative costs is at 4%, so that's council as well as council grants. The administration of the municipality is 18% of our expenditures, so 8.4 million. Protective services is just 1%. I will say that's not, protective services might sound a little confusing. That's not the RCMP cost, obviously. That's a provincial transfer. Transportation services is at 5% or 2.1 million. Our environmental costs are 2.9 million, which is 6% of the budget. And solid waste is 1%, 510,000, and that's net of tipping fees and fees for service. So by and large, you look at that, it's pretty obvious. A lot of our money goes to mandated expenses that we have limited control over. The transfers to other governments, as I mentioned, it's 45%. And I've taken this excerpt out of the budget just to show you what those costs are. So the largest one being the school board allocation. The budget for this year is expected to be 11,291,000. And that compares to the prior year budget, which was 10,577,000. And that's a legislative prescribed amount. It's not something we have any real control over. And it's based on the uniform assessment for the municipality, as well as the other municipalities in the province. The next largest one is the police protection, so that would be the RCMP. And on that one, council will recall last year we council made the strategic decision to increase the complement of officers. So we added 3 officers last year. This budget, we're proposing another 3 officers be added. And at the time, we had talked about adding a total, I think, of, I believe it was 7 officers at the time. So this will give us 6 more between the last year and this year. That expenditure is coming in at 8.7 million compared to the prior year of 7.8. So that factors in a 3.43% increase in policing costs, and then the 3 additional officers that we proposed. That is offset slightly by the provincial court fees. So we've got a budget there of 95,000 that we receive from fines and fees through the courts. And then we also have prosecution services, which we pay, which is 18,000. So that's all tied into our policing cost. Aside from those 2, which are the 2 larger ones, policing and education, we also have the Colchester East and Library, 275,000. And that cost is the same as last year. We did confirm there was no increase in that cost. And then assessment services, which is the PGSC, which I mentioned, do the assessment roles. We're projecting 763,000 this year compared to the prior year, which was 671,000. And then last but not least, we do have an agreement with Truro with respect to the Truro Library. And we pay a percentage of the operating expenses for that building. And that's based on an agreement that was drafted and factors in the square footage of the building. Our percentage of that square footage. So that's just 58,000. And it compares to the prior year budget, 44,000. All of those together gives us the 21 million or 45% of the budget expenditures. The next slide is our transfers to revenues. So you'll recall when we looked at the pie chart minutes ago, that made up 8% of our expenditures. So Essentially, these are different reserves we hold for different purposes. Most of them are capital reserves, but there are some that are also what we consider operating. Notably the special operating reserve. And by calling it an operating reserve, it gives you the ability to use it for either operations or capital. You can use it for one or the other. Last year, we had a budget of 1.9 million and change. This year, we're proposing an increase to it to 2.1 million. Our courthouse reserve, which is a capital reserve for upgrades to this building, we're increasing it to 300,000 from 250,000. The rec capital reserve that was created just a couple of years after the rec was built, and the point of that was to fund building capital improvements over the life of the building. 200,000 is what we've been putting away. Our fire insurance reserve, we've got 675,000 in it, and it's used to fund the insurance program for the fire brigades. And in addition to that, we have our municipal infrastructure development reserve. We've put an increase in this year from 200,000 up to 300,000. We have a special capital reserve, which is just general capital used for it. It's going to be 300,000. And then last but not least, our transfer to our major flood reserve, 100,000. So that brings us to a total on that on those line items to 3.9 million, up from 3.6 million. Some notable budget items, as I mentioned earlier, wages. So the employee market that plays a factor. Cost in both new positions, which council will have discussions on, as well as incremental costs, which council would have approved previously when they approved salary incremental increases for non-union and union staff. The RCMP, I do mention it's a notable budget item because we have 3.43% increase, and then the new officer increase. School board, we did see a 6.8% increase in that line item, and that was based on uniform assessment increases. So because you have higher uniform assessment, you see a higher increase in the school board expense. In terms of other items, as we go through some of the addition and deletion items, you'll see that we've proposed some new things. So we're looking at capacity building in this budget. So you'll see things like staffing positions or placeholders for staffing positions. Space requirements is a big one right now in terms of this building and being at capacity. So we do propose some new things in here that council will have to consider to build the capacity on that line. Another one is transit, and that'll be a discussion we'll have around additions and deletions and planning for proposed transit system over the next 12 months. And then finally, grants. Council has reviewed both the economic grant and the nonprofit grants through those programs, and so a final decision will have to be made on those. And also on some larger asks that have come in that don't fall within those programs. So there are a few of those as well. So looking ahead over the next meeting that we have set, we'll go into what we call additions and deletions, and that's where council typically make their strategic decisions. So we'll be looking at the grants. And as you recall, last year, the process was a bit streamlined around community and nonprofit grants, so you do have a recommendation that was made. See that at the last council meeting, I believe. So we'll go through that at additions and deletions. There are some other grants that are outside of those two programs, so a request was made by the Cougar Dome, Creamery Square, Big Mawway Divert Cultural Center, and also the Truro Colchester Welcome Network. So those items will all be items we'll discuss at additions and deletions as part of strategic priorities that council may want to set. Additional positions. We do have some placeholders we're looking to build into the budget in terms of one director position, deputy CAO, administrative support for administration, an IT help desk position. So those are things that we'll have to give consideration to. Also, looking at the courthouse here, and we've been talking about security for quite some time. So we do have a proposed what we call a building concierge, so it would be a position that we would be looking to do around security as well as customer support for people coming into the building and helping them find the people that they need to speak with. So that's something that we're proposing as a strategic project for the building. As I mentioned, also leased office space. We're looking at something and proposing something in the budget around leased space to make room for staff because of the constraints around this building. And then finally, we do have as well an ask from Colchester Ground Search and Rescue that was built into the budget additions as well. So last year they went to 80,000 from 56. This year they requested to go from 80 to 97. So it's a $17,000 increase that we have as part of those additions and deletions. So once we go through those items, I think we'll have a better sense of where we're going to land. But all things considered right now, if we were to approve everything that's in there, you would have a balanced budget. Now, some of those things change or council makes changes in them at the next meeting. We may have to discuss how we want to balance the budget, whether it's changing tax rates or there may be other things that council may want to look at adding. But all things considered, as I said earlier, pretty good position to be in. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the presentation. Any questions? We'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Scott. Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. You just Scott, please. I just have one question, Scott. Right off the bat.
Yeah.
It shows here notable budget items, our CMP going up 3.43% for new officers. We've got what right now? How many officers do we have right now?
I think we went last year to 35. Just let me confirm that because I just put it in. I think I put it in the transfer page. So let me check the budget just to confirm. Yeah, so last year we went to a complement of 35 officers, plus one civilian for criminal record checks. So this would bring us to 38.
Okay. Maybe you just explain it to me. So we had 35 plus for 7.8 million.
Yeah.
Go up 900,000 to 3 more officers. Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems to be, that's 11%.
Yeah, so the first thing right off the bat would be the 7.8. The 7.8 would have gone up 3.4% just for the cost increase.
I was for the salary component they have now.
That's right. And then after that, we added 3 additional positions. So that would be the difference that takes you up to the 8.7.
How much they go up here? So the salary.
The salary increase for them, I think, if I remember correctly, it was around 250,000 per officer, I think. But that's not just your salary, that's everything. So there's other things related to, there'd be training, benefits. Yeah, there would be, costs for things like equipment, cars. So it's an all-in cost.
So is that, we're looking at as that'd be a normal increase if we're looking at each year's thing? Or?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have increases every year based on, based on their employment contracts, as well as different things that they may encounter or have to provide their officers. So there'll always be that indexing of the cost, but when we add officers, that's when you get into higher flat rate cost per officer, right? Yeah.
All right, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, no problem.
Councillor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Stuart Scott. Just in the PVSC capped assessments, when you say 2.6%, that's the CPI and the new tax or the new growth combined?
That would just be the cap amounts. So then on top of that, you would get, when you have growth, new building construction, or there's a couple things that happen. There's also, I sell my house, cap comes off and it goes to market that year. So that bumps up your number as well. So when you take those things into account, so when you get into those things, our residential went up to 8.44%.
So the 2.6% is taken away from that?
Yeah, like the 2.6% would just be the cap amounts.
Is a component of the
It's a
8.4?
it's a
Okay,
component, but the other components would be new growth.
Yeah.
Sales changes and things like
Yeah.
that.
thank you.
Councillor Cooper. Oh, sorry, Councillor Martell.
Thank you. Through the chair to Scott. Just curious, when we underwent the municipal planning and rezoning of all of the lands in the county, did the zoning allocations cause some property assessments to increase just because they were rezoned? I was brought a couple of examples from people that had either farmland or resource land that is now zoned that actually increased 300%. So it went from, an assessed value where they were expecting a few percentage points to that value actually tripling. So just wondering if we are seeing an impact of that.
Yeah, I couldn't speak to specific examples, but I know, farmland versus, if it was farmland, agricultural land is assessed differently than residential land. So I guess it would depend if that's what happened. I mean, that could be, I would have to see the specifics on it. If you had a specific case, I could probably look into it, but yeah, I would have to look on a sort of a case by case basis, I would think.
Thank you. Welcome. Councillor Cooper.
Mayor, you're just going again. Can you give a little more detail and talk a little bit about space requirements? To get a plan.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably get into more of the details on that during our additions and deletions discussions, but I think right now, senior staff are sort of talking right now about limitations in this building around not having space to put people, and we've kind of maxed out space that we have available for office space. So I think the next step, I think, is to sort of bridge gaps around that would be to look at external space outside of the building. So one option that's quickly available is to lease space. Because if you look at, construction or things like that, that's a long-term plan, and it takes quite a while to do that, so. Lease space provides a quick turnaround if you need space right away.
So we don't have any thoughts where we're gonna go or anything? There's no-
Well, we do, yeah, I mean, we have some options, I think we'd be looking close to this building if possible.
Dan, please.
Sure, so through the budget exercise, what would happen is we'd be looking for a dollar value to be assigned to it. Of course, any negotiation of a lease would be an in-camera discussion you would have with council to see if council is comfortable with signing that lease. And you would do that obviously in a confidential way.
Okay, so we haven't come up with a figure we're looking at yet then.
We have, for budget purposes, sorry, through the chair, for budget purposes, we have a figure based on some discussions we've had in essentially the commercial sector. But the exact location and how much of that space council would be interested in procuring would be part of a discussion we'll have. At this point, it's just securing the value, so then we can have that discussion in the event council would like to pull the trigger.
Okay, so be more information coming before, okay, all right,
Councillor Kennedy.
Deputy Mayor too, Scott. How does cap growth work? Does it so many years or is there another criteria for that?
Yeah, it's basically PVSC look at CPI, and then they apply that for the province. They come up with a CPI factor and they apply it to all property that's capped. So everyone's residential home, we pay a cap increase on our assessment. So if you were assessed, let's say at 100,000 and it was 2%, then your assessment next year would be 102,000. But your market value could go up, to 130.
So is it the number of years they're in the house?
It's just as long as you're in the house, it's capped. And then if you sell your property to me, let's say you
Then it
build it to
goes-
me, then it goes to market.
Yeah. Can I
Yep.
ask a few? The 200 reserved for the rent, is that by year?
It is,
So
yeah.
I can go 13 times 200 and that's what's reserved?
Well, not exactly, because the reserve does get used periodically when we have to do capital upgrades. So the way we came up with the 200,000 was we looked at the building cost, and the building, at the time it cost $56 million. So we did a life cycle analysis on the assets that were part of that, and keeping in mind that Truro pays 50%, and also, a lot of times, capital upgrades to the building are eligible for grants. So we sort of factored all those in, we came up with the number of 200,000.
But it's not necessarily all there because it's used like you just.
It does, it gets used over the life cycle of a sportsplex, that, it could be 40, 50 years, right?
Now, the 6.8 increase uniform assessment, was that determined for the school board?
Yeah, so basically, the province has a formula, and they take our uniform assessment for our property within the county, and they charge it's just around 31 cents, I think, per $1,000 of assessment, and that works out to the grant that we have to pay. So it's
6.8 increase.
6.8, yeah.
That's pretty honest.
It is, yeah, it's been, I would say it's been higher, but it's also been lower, and a lot of it depends on how much we're seeing on uniform assessment increases. So again, the more we grow, the more it grows.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Scott? Councillor Weatherby, you looked like you were ready to press your button there.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. I didn't have a question. I had a couple of things that I could offer in explanation from history. I haven't worked closely with assessment in recent years, as I used to, but the capped assessment is based on your value when, as long as you live in and own your house, or not necessarily even live in, but as long as you own your house, the assessment only goes up the capped amount. If you sell your house outside your family, and there are certain criteria for that as well, that you could, your estate could leave your house to your daughter or whatever, then the capped assessment usually will stay. There are special circumstances, but if you sell your house outward, the assessment transfers from capped assessment to market assessment. So that's basically how that works. As long as you own your house, it has no bearing on how many years you're there or anything. It's just as long as you own your house, it only goes up the capped amount. The other thing, zoning and assessment never, ever used to go hand in hand. Like there would be no co-relationship at all. It's based on the improvements to the property. So if somebody made improvements to the property, then the assessment would go up. But just because the zoning changed would not change the assessment. And that's the historical way it went. Now, unless they come up with something new recently, then I don't know about it. But that's the way it always went. So if you had some markedly big changes in assessment, it would likely be as a result of the land use changing or improvements to the land or something like that. But like Scott said, you'd have to look at it on an individual basis. So that's why I would jump.
No, thank
Or
you for,
jumpy, whichever
thank you
you.
for that explanation. That's helpful.
Thanks.
I just had a quick one on the RCMP costs. So when we add officers, does the province kick in? It's, are we still 70-30 or 80-20 or?
We are, but
We bear the full cost of adding new officers?
we wouldn't bear the full cost of the officer. We'd still be paying the 70-30.
Great.
Yeah.
And Scott, a few years ago, there was the RCMP got a pretty significant raise. And it was to be retroactive.
Yeah.
And we were scared that we were going to be asked to pay all that retroactive amount of money. Where is that at? Did the federal government end up paying that or?
Yeah, I think actually our CIO, I think, received correspondence on that
Okay.
recently.
Through the chair, so the province is contending that, and again, there was some correspondence went around that they effectively were giving to the federal government. They were contending that the cost of that retroactive pay shouldn't be borne by the province or any municipal units. Now, that all said, there is, as of course we are aware, there was a larger policing review was done. So there is some discussion going to be happening over the next month or two with where future billing and whatnot for services of RCMP and policing services are going. But the province did send out a statement, and actually I think it might have even made its way into the media, where the province had taken the position that anything retroactively shouldn't have been borne by the province or the municipal units. But I think there's a whole lot of discussion around what billing is going to look like in the next couple of months.
Stay tuned. Any other questions for Scott or anybody else? So the next steps then will be our additions and deletions. Delicious.
Delicious.
Delicious meeting.
What are you bringing?
Additions and deletions meeting next week.
That's right.
We'll have a lot more detail in that in terms of what's being proposed and, yeah. So do we need to make any formal motions tonight? Receive the presentation?
Correct.
Okay. I have a motion then to receive the presentation, moved by Councillor Cooper, seconded by Councillor Richardson. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Ready for the question?
Question.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Dr. Mike. Well, I should have asked. Sorry. Anybody opposed to this motion? Nobody's opposed, the motion carries. Nothing further before the meeting, then I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Patton.
Thank you.
The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.